exciting story on Warriors basketball.
Curry sidestep, Curry drive, Curry flip, Curry good!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on KNBR 104.5 and 6.8, streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
All right, welcome in. It is Dubs OT for a final time. The 2023-24 season for the Golden State Warriors is history. Sacramento eliminates the Warriors. Payback for the Warriors' elimination of the Kings a year ago in the Western Conference first-round series. Tonight, it was an elimination game in the play-in tournament, and for the most part, it was all Sacramento, up 9 after 1, leading by as many as 26, really putting the game away back half of the third quarter, and in the fourth quarter, wound up not being close. 118-94 is the final. 808 KNBR is the number. It's John Dickinson and Greg Silver with you tonight here on The Sports Leader. We're going to keep this thing going as long as the people want to talk tonight. Everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch, as folks file in, we really appreciate it. 415-808-5627 is the number to give us a call or shoot us a text as the Warriors see their season come to an end. Greg, good to be with you, my friend. It's been a long day in Sacramento for us. And, you know, it just goes to show you, no matter how many ways you think you can evaluate the way a game might go, you end up being wrong about because I didn't have blowout either way, really, on the scorecard. But that's what the Kings turned this one into, and just a really, 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 really disappointing performance for the Warriors on so many levels.
Yeah, it is good to be with you, JD, out here in Sacramento, and I'm glad that, given that this is our last Dubs OT for a while, we get to go out with a bang together, and we're going to try to make this much more of a bang than the Golden State Warriors did. But first off, I do have to tip my cap to Mike Brown and the Sacramento Kings. I think for all the injuries and the way their team was trending late in the season, they had this group ready to go. They were locked in. They were focused. They played more aggressively. I thought the Warriors did not lock in defensively until midway through the second quarter when they had a little bit of a run. When they were down 4 at the half, I know we kind of looked at each other and said, well, they could be down 20, but they also could be up by 10 if they just made some layups too and kind of got it together. But look, the bottom line is, I know one of the things we discussed is you know what you can get from Clay and you know what you can get from Wiggins after watching March. Well, we got the November version of both of those players, and it was just game over tonight. It was a beatdown from Sacramento.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, the Warriors starters all worked in plus-minus. Kuminga ended up minus 22. Wiggins, and he didn't start. He was the 6th player. I mean, Chris Paul minus 15. I mean, look at all of the key Warriors. I mean, Steph minus 21. Wiggins, I mentioned, minus 25. Draymond, minus 22. I mean, it was just a domination basically by the Sacramento starting group in this one. Everybody in double figures. Everybody had at least 15 points. And, you know, the Warriors found themselves up against it and up against it immediately. Draymond hit a 3 on the first possession, but then Keegan Murray answered, and that was a sign of things to come because Keegan Murray was outstanding in this game tonight. 8 of 13 from 3. He scores 32 points. Sabonis did his thing, 16, 12, 7 assists. De'Aaron Fox was really pushing the tempo, which is something that Sacramento wanted to do, and Harrison Barnes and Keon Ellis also just filling the gaps where they needed to be filled for Sacramento. You mentioned early the Warriors are going under screens on Keegan Murray. I mean, their defense against Keegan Murray. I mean, Keegan Murray, if you watch the Kings, his 3-point shots are often exactly the 3-point shots that the Warriors have given up to everybody all season. The spots on the floor,
G.G. Jackson, the Trey Murphy.
Like Keegan Murray is like the worst possible player for the Warriors to face when their 3-point defense is as bad as their 3-point defense was tonight. The Kings were getting whatever they wanted. It was 19-12 quickly. I mean, Keon Ellis picked Steph Curry. He later picked Klay Thompson. I mean, the Warriors were fortunate they weren't down 20 at the end of the first quarter, even though it was 31-22. At that point, the Kings just looked fresh, aggressive. The Warriors were scattered and frenetic. And, you know, then came the second quarter where the Warriors did get back into it in the back half of the quarter. Jonathan Kuminga was terrible in his first shift, and then he was really good in his second shift.
And it's okay to say that both are true.
In the first half. And the Warriors needed it. I mean, it was apparent early that with Klay Thompson playing as terribly as he did, how about this for Klay? 0 for 10, 0 for 6 from 3. I mean, how things end matters as far as, the future.
Are those numbers bad?
Well, is 0 for 10 worse than 3 of 19? Because that's what the numbers were in the elimination game last year in LA when the Warriors got beat by the Lakers and lost that series 4-2. So, yeah, Wiggins was awful, chunking layups. Klay Thompson was taking horrible shots. I mean, I think the story of this one, before we get to the phone lines, 808 KNBR, the number, again, to join the conversation, couple of lines open. We're going to get to you here as the calls file in, and we'll kind of fill in the gaps as the night goes on. But this is a night to vent. This is a night to be disappointed. This is a night to be frustrated. This is a night to, talk about how basically the Warriors, and I'll just come out and say it right off the top. Tonight, the Warriors wasted their 27-12, 39-game stretch to end the season. It's completely meaningless as far as I'm concerned. As to what this team needs to do for next year, the reality is they didn't beat many good teams in that stretch. And you know what? The Kings, for all their faults down the stretch, were still a good team that had the exact same record as the Warriors for the entire season, and now find a way to beat the Warriors in game number 83 tonight. But Kings were hot from 3 all night. I went on a couple of radio shows around the country and said people were asking, what's the pathway to a Kings win? I said I thought they had to make 23s. They made 18 out of 39. And, that is close enough to get the job done there. But the story of this one for me, bad shots for the Warriors, turnovers. They got out hustled. They got out rebounded. Too many missed layups. They were giving up wide open threes. Fast break points was an issue for the Warriors in this one at times early in the game. Now they didn't allow them later on, but early in the game, I think it was 10-0 at one point in terms of fast break points. Ended up relatively with not many on either end, but the Kings were hot. Kuminga was really good. Him and Moody and Podziemski actually wound up kind of saving the Warriors at the end of the half.
No doubt.
And the Warriors were able to come out, get it to one early in the third quarter. And then Klay missed a layup into a Keon Ellis 3. There was another couple of turnovers into a Murray 3.
Yeah, the loose ball.
And the Warriors just got beat to loose balls all night. The Kings were just on point. They wanted to win every margin. It reminded me a little bit of game 1 in the series last year, where the Warriors really got out hustled. They really took terrible shots, and then they corrected it as the series went on. Well, you don't get to correct it because there is no series. The Warriors are going home and the Kings are going on to New Orleans. So 808 KNBR, the number. Let's get to the phones. We'll get it started with Connor in Dublin here on The Sports Leader. What's going on tonight, Connor?
What's going on tonight? Nothing good, that's for sure.
No, sir.
And no, not at all. And this one hurts. And it starts off with in the first half, the very first quarter, when we saw Curry practically giving away the ball to the Kings. And from there on, it just got worse and worse. Fouls and all sorts of things and missing shots. And the Warriors just had absolutely zero chemistry between each other that night. And their mindset was not enough. They didn't have a playoff mindset. Then the Kings did. The Kings essentially wanted it more than the Warriors did. And so they won it.
Yeah, from the jump, they wanted it more. I mean, it was just. I mean, they looked like a team that was hell bent on they weren't going to go out the way that they would have gone out had they not won tonight, right? Like they had kind of faltered and floundered down the stretch. They heard for the last couple of days how their season was cooked, and you know what? It might be on Friday because they haven't beaten the Pelicans all year, but they were hell bent on not getting sent home in their own building again by the Warriors as they were last April.
Yeah. And to build off of what she said, I mean, I guess, and actually, you know what? No, I'm going to go over to transitioning to what the Warriors can do ending, the season ended. Kerr needs to jump on this and start making decisions now, which will on what to do for this team immediately, for today or tonight or as early as tomorrow, on what changes they can make. They need to jump on that right away.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Connor. Thank you for the call, and we'll continue here on KNBR. It is Dubs OT with JD. It's John Dickinson. It's Greg Silver. Again, tonight is kind of twofold and maybe even threefold. It's the frustration of the game that was just played over at Golden One Center in Sacramento. Tonight, it's the all systems fail that it really turned into for the Warriors. It's also now a bridge to next year. And I think our question of the night is, does tonight and the way the Warriors went out invalidate the 27-12 finish? Because there are, does it change the Klay Thompson, question about whether he's going to be coming back next year? What do they do with the, Chris Paul? Like, can you truly keep things the same next year? All of those things, as we move forward here, are going to be on the board. Let's keep it going here. Is it NATO next on the phones? NATO in Sacramento on the Sports Leader.
Hello, can you hear me?
I got you loud and clear. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing great. What's on your mind, man? What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about how the Sacramento Kings smashed on the Warriors.
Yeah, they did. Absolutely.
Yeah, brutally, too.
It was.
We repped that socket over here.
All right, NATO. See you later. Have a nice night. All credit to the Kings, though. Yeah. Great win. Great win. Good team. I know I was talking to a few people before the game on the Sacramento side of things, and I really thought, and I said this to you a little bit, Greg, at times, I thought the Kings were not nearly as bad as some of the losses that they had taken down the stretch, especially without Kevin Huerter and without Malik Monk. Like, I think there was a little bit too much made that they were slumping at a greater level than they actually were. And, they were losing close games to Phoenix. Yeah, the Pelicans have kind of owned them. We'll see if it happens again on Friday in their next elimination game. But, they go to Boston, they lose by a point. They are up big in OKC. They're up big in New York, and lose close in a lot of those games. So I don't think the Kings were playing nearly as badly as it was sort of made to be, seemed, over the course of the last week in the lead up to this game. But no, all credit to Sacramento. They get the job done. They earned the victory, and they'll get an opportunity to play for their season on Friday again. And if they can win that one, I think that almost erases the tough down the stretch, to the negative that they had with some of those close losses against good teams. But this is Dubs OT. Let's keep it rolling. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Drew Down in Tracy is next here on the Sports Leader. Drew Down, I'm gonna give the floor to you here as we get things cooking tonight on Dubs OT.
Hey, what's up, JD? Man, very disappointing loss. I gotta be honest. Tuesday night's my bowling league, so I was at the bowling alley, watching the game. Unfortunately for the Warriors, your boy was cooking, with a 650 over 3 games, but the Warriors definitely were not cooking. Klay Thompson was 0 points. He was definitely a guy that I thought was going to have a big game. I thought the Kings, would put a lot of attention and pressure on Curry. I thought Klay would be able to take advantage of that. And like I said, I'll preface this by saying I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of the game. So a lot of this analysis is box score Betty for me, but
okay.
0 points from Klay Thompson in an elimination game is just, that can't happen. He's been playing really good of late, but last year against the Lakers in that series, Klay was not good. And in an elimination game, in a must-win game, to have 0 points, that just can't happen. So that was pretty much probably an impossible task to overcome. And then I saw Trace with only 11 minutes. I saw he was a minus 10, but only 11 minutes for Trace. Do you have any thoughts on that, Diddy?
Yeah, he was not good early in the game, and Kerr got him out, and he went to Looney, and Looney kind of helped stabilize things there for a bit. And, then basically it was, Kuminga had a really bad first shift, really bad, like missing layups, taking bad shots, losing people on the three ball. And then Kerr subbed him out, went to Moody. Moody played pretty well. And then he gave Kuminga another shot because the Warriors were just not scoring. And Kuminga really played well at the end of the second quarter and helped the Warriors get back into the game. But at that point, it basically became Looney had played better than TJD. And you want to have Draymond and Kuminga out there because Kuminga had earned that with the way that he played in his second shift. So Kuminga started the second half for TJD because the Warriors had made a run to cut it down to 4 at halftime. And I think it was the right call. I actually tweeted it out at halftime. I said, I think Kuminga should start for TJD. He didn't really have it tonight. The first real, big stage kind of a game for him. And if the guy doesn't have it, you got to go away from him in a elimination type game. And so Kurt did that. The problem is the Warriors really only played well for about 8 minutes tonight out of 48. And it was about the last 6 of the second quarter and about the first 2 of the third quarter. And other than that, the Kings really, just out-hustled them, outworked them, and deserved the win.
Well, I want to get to one comment. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Drew Down. No, go ahead, Drew Down. I'm going to let you comment real quick, and then, go for it, Drew Down.
Greg, relax. Greg, kick back. Greg, relax, buddy. I thought Keegan Murray, man, was cooking. Shout out to Keegan. He's always been kind of an enigma for the Kings this year. I feel like they really expected him to, kind of take that leap forward and become, an all-star level player. So I thought he definitely, and like I said, I saw some of the game, but a lot of it I'm basing on the box score. Shout out Keegan Murray. He really stepped up. And then
definitely
another thing is it's been a story. It's been an issue and a story for the Warriors for the past 10 plus years, 16 turnovers to the 8 turnovers for the Kings, 20 points off the turnovers for the Kings. So, what's new? They always say, well, the way they play, they're fast paced. Move the ball, you're going to expect it. I saw a lot of them turnovers, man.
They're not good. They're not good enough to make up for it anymore, Drew Down. And we'll end it on that note because we have a lot of people that want to talk, and I appreciate you chiming in. We'll see you in the chat as well here as we keep things rolling. But honestly, Greg, like the old adage of hey, the Warriors can turn it over and it's just part of their style of play. They aren't good enough to offset that anymore. That the highs aren't quite as high and the lows are much lower for this team collectively. Really for Klay Thompson, he can still get to those highs, but the lows are really low. And we saw that a lot early in the season. We saw it when they went out last year against the Lakers. But it is kind of built. They were overpassing early in the game. I thought the Warriors were really overpassing, and it was leading to some turnovers, which was leading to some of those transition opportunities for the Kings.
So there was one thing that Mike Brown said in the pregame press conference, which I think ties in really nicely to what you just said about the Warriors. Mike Brown said, we cannot afford to have to go against the Warriors' set defense every possession. He said, we have to move fast off of makes and misses. And then to tie that all together, he said, you have to take the first open shot. You can't let the shot clock dwindle down because you're waiting for the best shot possible. And that was kind of what his opposition did, the Warriors, in that first half, which I think was a spot-on observation there. The comment I wanted to get to, and, it wouldn't be a true Dubs OT if we didn't have a bunch of hosts who interrupted, and then we'll get back to the phone.
Sure.
So, apologies to Drew Down.
No, you owed both of us one of those for this year.
And Regulator said no rotation would have worked today. They needed better players.
Totally. I agree with that.
I'm not trying to absolve the coaching staff of anything, but I do agree in the sense of no rotation, no matter whether it was Podziemski and Moody playing more minutes or Kuminga starting instead of Trace Jackson-Davis. Nothing was going to change it when you got that version of Klay and Wiggins. Like, they got full on beaten. It wasn't a game that came down to 2 possessions where you look at it and say, wow, that's one the Warriors really kicked away. They were not on the same planet as the Sacramento Kings by the end of the fourth.
Yeah, and so much of this, and we're going to get back to the phone, so much of this is, for me, the Warriors had developed this group that had played well together with TJD and Draymond, and Kuminga, had really helped him, and Pajemski. And, Kuminga was, because I think of the injury, was a little out of sorts, and then he came back, and then he went back out again, and then he was coming back. He was coming off the bench, all of that. And, TJD had been such a big factor, but then, now you're throwing him right into an elimination game. And so it's natural to think that maybe he doesn't play at the highest of levels in that type of situation. And so if the Warriors had worked so hard all year to try to get the pieces to fit, the one thing that we didn't know, though, was would the new look Warriors be better or worse against Sacramento? We had a great feel for the new look Warriors against a bunch of other teams. And the same was true for the new look Kings, because the Kings didn't have Herter and didn't have Monk, who are two bad defensive players. They basically have substituted Keon Ellis, who's been a terrific defensive player and has made some threes. And Davion Mitchell's played more, and Mitchell's been more aggressive, but Mitchell's an excellent defender. So the Kings played much better defense against the Warriors and were much more physical from the jump. And then you had the Warriors, who their new look, I think a lot of it came down to, again, this is more on the margins, but the new look aspect of the Warriors failed tonight. The new look aspect of the Kings was a home run tonight, but that doesn't absolve the reality of you always look at your best players. And Steph, you've got Steph, you've got Wiggins, you've got with Steph with the 6 turnovers, you've got Wiggins, who was just kind of a no-show for the most part, chunking layups. Like I said early, Kuminga was really bad other than that one stretch, I thought, for the most part. And Chris Paul didn't have it tonight. It was the new look guys. It was the veterans. It was the future Hall of Famers. It was kind of everybody. All right, let's get back to the phones. Let's kind of go rapid fire here, as we do have a bunch of people that want to talk. Robert in Oakland is next here on Dubs OT on the Sports Leader. Hey, Robert.
Hey, what's up, JG?
What's going on, man?
I just want to say this loss is unacceptable, but it is what it is. I called back in February talking about how what if they didn't make the playoffs, what changes they would make. So I'm just wondering, do you think they'll still keep Kuminga and other youngsters and possibly trade the youngsters for more older pieces and have one more last dance next year? And if it doesn't work out, just crush everything after next year and just go back to square one.
Yeah, I think that is the most interesting question coming off of tonight is all right, they didn't make the playoffs. How do they get better? And, their means to get better, first they got to make a decision on Klay Thompson. Is Klay coming back or not? And at what rate? Somebody was telling me there was a report, and forgive me if I missed this or you didn't see it. There was a report that the money for Klay is around 30, like Klay's asking price is around 30. Good luck with deuces if it's going to be 30. Like point blank. Like, I think it would have been deuces if he had a good game tonight. But like, that decision has to be made. Then you have to decide what you're going to do with the Chris Paul contract. Do you bring him back? Do you let him go for nothing? Do you try to trade him for another player with a younger player attached to him? Again, I've said this a lot. The people in the chat, the people on the phone lines, the people who've heard me, I do think the Warriors offseason comes down to a decision on Kuminga, because I think Kuminga is the only young player of value enough when attached to a big contract that can net a player coming back, that can walk onto the Warriors roster and be their second best player next to Steph Curry. And then you pepper Draymond in around it. Then you pepper in some of the other young guys around it, and you try to go that direction. It's either that, or you're determining that you want to build around Kuminga as the number 2. And I think tonight just shows you, again, I know he's been out of the lineup, but tonight just shows you that he's got a ways to go before he's going to be a number 2. He may be there eventually. Hell, he may even be a number 1 eventually. He can't be the number 2 next to Steph next year on a team that's going to be, forget about a contender, just a team that's going to be in the playoffs.
Here's another thing that I was thinking about, and I hate to bring this up because I thought 2 players were really good tonight. I thought Kevon Looney was great in his plug-in minutes, and Draymond was pretty sensational for most of the game. But Draymond Green, as great as he was and as clear as he's worth it to keep around despite all of the difficulties, the drama, and anything that happens off the court or getting ejected, he needs to wear this 10 seed on his chest just as much as anybody, JD.
So totally, no doubt, because he missed all of the games that he missed. I mean, the reason in part the Warriors were playing tonight was because Draymond got suspended a couple of different times. And it threw the whole thing out of whack to a point where they were 19-24 before they got on their run. And the question they're going to have to ask is the 27-12 finish more of what they truly were, or are they closer to a 46-36 team that tricked some games away down the stretch that could have been a little bit better than that? I think it's more of I think it's more of the fact that they are a team that's just 40. They're a 46-36 ish team. I don't think they should have been a 52-win team or anything like that.
Yeah, and just to revisit the question of the night for a second before we get back to the phones, our Dubs OT question of the night: does tonight's blowout in Sacramento largely erase the 27-12 stretch to finish the regular season? Our three options on the poll are: yep, didn't sniff the playoffs; no, but it does some; and still found lots of good. Right now, we have, as predicted, with the instant reaction and a lot of fans being upset, rightfully so. The yes option is at 79%, leading the way. The other two making up 11% and 9%. So, I'm kind of with you on this one. I know your answer, you kind of led it off the top of the show, was yes. I do think so. And call it fair or not, Klay Thompson, for as great as he did with finding a good mental space and turning that season around, how you finish matters. And boy, did he finish about as bad as we've ever seen him play.
No question about it. 808 KNBR is the number. 415-808-5627 to join the conversation. It's Dubs OT with JD and Greg Silver here on The Sports Leader. We got a lot of people that want to talk on the phones. We'll get into the comments as well in the YouTube chat as the Warriors go down 118-94 in Sacramento. Kings throttle them with the exception of about an 8-minute stretch into the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter. Let's go to Foxy next here on The Sports Leader. Hey, Foxy, you're on Dubs OT.
What's up, JD? It's Fossey.
Oh, what's up, Fossey? What's up, Fossey? Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Yeah.
Last show, say what's up. I'm always in the chat.
Appreciate you.
Man, I don't even know what Greg's question was for the poll. I answered it later, but man, tough loss. You know what? This is about where we were though throughout the whole year. I really felt like we had a chance though going in. Whole week I was telling myself, just give Steph Curry a chance and he'll do something special. But man, even if we won tonight, there was no way we were beating the Pelicans. I mean, all these teams in the West, it seems like they got like 3 all-stars. I mean, we saw it tonight. Sabonis, Fox, and now Murray's making a name for himself. And even if we made it past them, the Pelicans, they got their big 3 in Ingram, Zion, and CJ McCollum. And, man, you look at our guys, man, these guys are just puppies now, rolling with some older dogs. So hopefully, we do something next year. Definitely makes it easier to give this whole team a facelift the way we got smacked around today. So looking forward to see what Dubs do. Hopefully, our GM, Dunleavy can do something to keep Steph Curry in the mix next year. But, man, I'm damn near hella sad don't get to listen to Dubs OT anymore. But, good year. Cheers, boys.
Yeah, Fossey, appreciate you. And, we got one more Just Dub show that we're going to roll out on Saturday to kind of recap things once Mike Dunleavy Jr. will have his press conference the next couple of days. We'll, cooler heads, things will calm down a little bit. We'll get a little bit of a taste of what's going on in the post-game pressers and the things that are said in the aftermath and the reports that come out, because I go back to being in LA last year when the Warriors were knocked out by the Lakers and blown out in a pretty similar game, actually, a game where the Lakers kind of got out ahead. Warriors made a little bit of a run, and then in the second half, it was basically all Lakers. Klay Thompson was terrible. And immediately in the aftermath, there was a report from The Athletic, immediately, it was ready to be published when the clock hit 0. The Warriors want to keep it together and run it back with Steph, Klay, Draymond, Steve Kerr one more time. And if anything, they were committed to the vets over the younger players at that particular point in time. So it's going to be interesting what happens, and I haven't seen anything that was ready to drop right now. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a cooling off period and a little bit more of a deliberate approach as to how they look to go about the changes that are necessary. But this isn't last year. This isn't last year.
No, it's not. And, by the way, big shout out to Fozzie, and we will, shout out a lot of our regulars toward the end of the show.
No question.
Want to keep it rolling. But Fozzie, we appreciate the call, and chat is popping off right now. I know this is a little bit of a funeral kind of show. And JD, I'm going to be honest, I definitely grew up being a Warriors fan and everything, but working with this job obviously reshaped how I looked at the team, got to look at it in a little more analytical way. But I am bummed out because this is the last Dubs OT we're going to do, and we put a lot of work into making this happen, and everyone in the chat right here is just making me realize, how much of a part of, the Bay Area audience this show really is. And I don't want to get too sentimental too early in the show, but this has been a blast, and, we will go out with a bang. If the Golden State Warriors didn't give you the effort you wanted tonight, I promise you, John Dickinson and Greg Silver absolutely will.
Yeah, we got you covered, and we got a couple of phone lines open, but people really want to talk on the phones. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Chris in Larkspur is next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Chris. Oh, we lost Chris. All right, from Chris, let's go to Arjun. Arjun?
Hello.
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?
What's up? So my friend told me to call you guys. So
okay.
I've never watched your guys' show before, but I wanted to say something.
Okay.
So this loss stings really bad, but let me remind all you Warriors fans listening, we're some of the luckiest sports fans in the history of all sports. 4 rings in 6 years, the back-to-back, winning one at home, and getting a sweep against LeBron in the finals. On top of that, getting to witness Stephen Curry's prime was a true gift.
Nope. Yeah, no doubt. And thank you for the phone call. I mean, yeah, that is a bit of perspective that always, I think, is bears pointing out. I mean, over the course of the last decade, I mean, the things that the Warriors have done, and the MVP Hall of Fame level play of Steph and Clay and Draymond and the things that they've accomplished. But the reality is, this thing's in the here and now. And the here and now is, how do they get back to being a contender again? And, I think in some ways the blowout tonight and not making the playoffs and finishing 10th, despite the fact that they were 27-12, I think it makes it easier to make some tough decisions. I think the Warriors were headed down a path of, it was almost too good to change. Right. In a way, and you could sense that they were really starting to buy in to the team that they were becoming down the stretch here. But the one thing we kept saying a lot on Dubs OT every night that they would win, still 10th, up to 9th, back to 10th. So they really only went up from 11th to 10th, and I guess 12th from their lowest point when they were 19-24 at the end of January. But this team, I think the way that it ended with the team that they knocked out a year ago, knocking them out, having it not be close. Again, you were the 10th best team in the West, and you got beat in the play. I think that makes it. There's just a clarity that comes with that, Greg, to where I think it makes it easier to. You know what? We're going to have a firm number on Klay Thompson. And we're not going beyond it. And if that number's 25 or 22 or 20 or whatever it is per year, if Klay can get 30 somewhere else, see ya. I think there's they can be a little bit more draw a line in the sand as far as a lot of those things go and are evaluated. They can look now toward Kuminga as a chip and be willing to maybe move him if they truly believe that they can cobble together another team around Steph that can be significantly, better than this team was. You can move on from Chris Paul, whereas I think it was we're starting to even hear rumors about, would they bring Chris Paul back to be the backup point guard? I think tonight in some ways, Greg, and maybe you disagree with me, it makes it easier to make some tough decisions with a clearer head.
I would say so. And to bring up a comment from the chat, which have been hard to track because you guys have been awesome making the chat lively, but our buddy Bill M says, stupid to trade Kuminga just because he's the only asset you have. And what I would say to that is that I think it's stupid if you don't care about your future. But our point here is you do kind of have to pick a path, which is Steph Curry has X number of years of playing high-level basketball left. Do you really try to put the pedal down and go get a second star, which they did not have tonight or even close? And you see what happens.
I mean, you look at the three best players, like regardless of who was out for Sacramento, like Malik Monk's a nice player, but their three best players going into this game are Fox, Sabonis, Fox, and Keegan Murray. And they all performed tonight. The Warriors had a difficult time even acknowledging who their three best players were all season long because it was somebody different. It was Steph and coming into the year, Clay.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't Clay, and then it was Kuminga, and then it was sometimes Wiggins, and then Draymond would do it. Like there was never forget about three. Like you kind of need to have a pecking order where everybody knows. And for a good chunk of this run, it was Steph and Clay, and then it was Steph and Clay and KD, or Steph and Clay and Draymond and KD. Like it was or Steph and KD and Clay. Obviously KD was in the top two when he was on the team, if not one at times. But what I'm getting at, Greg, is you knew who the three, you can't not know who your second and third best players are. And let's just be honest. If Kuminga truly is your second best player, well, you know what that gets you? 10th in the West and bounced on the first night of the play-in.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that Kuminga doesn't have room to grow.
No,
but
totally.
With the short timeline, it's like the narrative has been the Warriors are both too old and too young. And Kuminga at age 25 might be a second best player on a championship level team. Heck, he could maybe even be a first best player on a really good team with the potential that he has. But Steph Curry is not going to be around, or if he is, he's not going to be playing at the superstar level that he was for a lot of the season by the time Kuminga reaches 25. So you're just racing the clock. And it's just not a situation you can have. You got to pick a path on, do you go try to get someone like Paul George, who has 1 year left on his contract, and someone who's older, he's a 3-and-D guy. By the way, speaking of defending the perimeter, my goodness, someone that could do that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and good luck with the Clippers, moving him to you at that point. But they're going to have to, I think, at least look at the possibility, because it all gets down to all these different conversations that we talked about weeks ago. When this thing ends, that the Warriors are going to have to try to figure out some answers to. 808 KNBR, the number, 415-808-5627. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open there as well, as the Warriors get beaten Sacramento 118-94. 808 KNBR is the number, and that's where Don in San Francisco checks in here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Don.
Oh, what's up tonight?
Oh, well, you tell us. Tough night for the Dubs, good night for the Kings.
Well, it's a good night for the Kings, yeah. Well, we had our glory years, but, somebody beat me to them, what they said about it. No, it's I guess the Warriors, they got to start maybe getting a few free agents. Maybe they got to make some trades,
Yeah, it's trades more than free agents, because there isn't really a way to clear enough cap space to get somebody to basically sign on the dotted line to come over without completely gutting the roster. And so I think it's trades, and they do have the means to make some trades. When you look at the Chris Paul contract. Again, that's a $30 million contract that they could send somewhere, and the team that the Warriors send him to could turn that into a zero because it's a non-guaranteed deal. So the Warriors could do that with Chris Paul. Now you got to attach a player like maybe a Kuminga to that, and then you look around at what kind of player you can do. That they could do, I think, a Wiggins kind of a your problem for our problem. Kind of a deal, because he isn't on a contract that is great at this point, but that's the kind of move that you would have to make there. They got to make a decision on Clay. Obviously he's not somebody that would be traded, but he's somebody that, I think the Warriors wanted to be hard line on a number for Clay. I think tonight, you can say it's one game, but I think tonight shows you that the low lows are still going to be there enough to where, you're going to have to – he's not going to get $30 million a year from the Warriors, I don't think. Thanks, Don. Appreciate the call. 808 KNBR. We'll get to some more calls coming up here in a second. Quick thought to you, Greg.
Yeah, still a lot to take in. I think you can kind of see it in the callers too. I think there's a lot of emotions coming out. I think last year, JD, and correct me if this wasn't your perception of it from working in your previous life, but I think the emotions were a little bit more stunned in losing to the Lakers. And I know that the Warriors clearly ran out of gas in the tank. They didn't have a whole lot left by the time they got there, but I think that they were coming a year off of a championship. It was a really up and down year. There was kind of this false sense of, wow, Steph Curry just dropped 50 points in a game 7, to where it's like maybe they can still do something special because they have a championship core. I think this year, a lot of it, and my perception early in the fourth quarter was the Warriors found things at certain points, and they found it to where people were more comfortable with their role. But at the end of the day, a lot of these good performances were Band-Aids. And I think the Band-Aid got ripped off hard and fast.
It did. And, they had a little bit of an uneven finish to the season. I think, they didn't quite have as much momentum as they thought they did. I think they did coming off of the road trip when they had to, they went on the 5-game trip. They came home and beat Dallas. They went back and beat Houston. They almost won the game in Dallas. And when they didn't win the game in Dallas, I think the Warriors, and rightfully so, because they looked gassed over the last week of the season. But the reality is they took their foot off the gas. They couldn't really reacclimate Kuminga. So I think Kuminga was just all out of whack, basically, because he hadn't been playing, and then his role was a little bit different. So I'm not even really being that hard on Kuminga for not playing well in a cup. Really for the most part, he did not play well.
Far from the worst player.
He was far from the worst player.
From the second worst player.
But my bigger point, Greg, is they lost some of the momentum that they had built up with him because he was injured and because he was kind of in and out of the lineup over the last week and because they rested guys. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have rested guys or anything like that, but they did not play as well over the last week. And I think you saw, especially among the veteran players that played, even though there were other nights where they didn't play, I think on the nights that they played, you really did see how tired this team was. Not an excuse, but I think a little bit of maybe we should have seen a little bit more of this coming against a younger and more energetic and well-coached Sacramento team.
Well, listen, the guy that they primarily built up momentum with during the late stretch in the season was Trace Jackson-Davis, who was getting in the starting lineup every game and playing really good basketball by and large. He just didn't have it tonight. He wasn't very effective at the beginning. They went to Kuminga early. He had a rough start, but then had a nice little mini run of his own in the second shift, and they needed his scoring to stay afloat. And then, thank goodness for Kevon Looney coming in and seeming to just be always ready and providing some pretty good minutes. But if you told me you were going to get C- or worse basketball from Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, I'd say absolutely no chance they even compete in this game.
Yeah, and yeah, they really didn't. I mean, for the most part, and the times that they did, they shot themselves in the foot. Especially after they had gotten back to within one early in the third quarter. When they got to within one early in the third quarter, there was that sequence where there was the bad Klay shot, or there was the missed layup, and then Keon Ellis hit a 3. There were a couple of turnovers into a Keegan Murray 3, and the Warriors basically in that moment where they got back down 7 quickly, they just started taking bad shots again. It was like it went right back to the way that they started the game, and it really led me mid-third quarter to say they don't have it tonight because they just did not have the resolve to just look like they got it stabilized, but the moment things started to go awry, they're getting out hustled again, they're turning it over again, they're taking bad shots again, and they just were not the better team, which the reality of the situation is, all year long, the Kings were a better team than the Warriors. Now, they had some injuries late. The Warriors played better down the stretch, but they just were not cohesive enough for whatever reason and not energetic enough. Like that to me, like they did not play with an urgency tonight, which I think was really disappointing.
Does this warrant a certain drop on the soundboard that I have?
No, I don't think it was. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. No, I don't think it was a gutless effort, but it was just, I don't even think it was uninspired. It was just, they did not recognize how it's odd to say this for a team with so many veterans and so many guys that have won championships, but there just was not an urgency tonight. There was just not a hustle. There was not an edge or a force. Like they got beat to every loose ball. They got beat to every rebound until they got down middle of the second quarter. And then Draymond was digging, and then they were fighting. Like they really fought for about 8 minutes tonight. And when they fought, they got back into the game. Eric in San Francisco next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Eric.
Hey, JD.
What's going on tonight?
Yeah. So I guess, I called in a couple games ago about the Warriors' record against the rest of the top 10 and against the West, and was wondering if this finish was kind of smoke and mirrors. And I guess tonight we kind of got our answer, unfortunately. When I look at this season, what I'm worried about for the offseason is that we might try and double down, because if you look at it, we finished 10th in the West, the Warriors finished 10th in the West, and the Spurs, Wembanyama was playing like an all-NBA center at the end of the season, and they have a ton of cap room, and the Rockets are getting better too. I don't see. Do you think Kuminga's good enough to get a legit number 2? I don't know if he's got that much.
I think he's part of a package. Yeah. To me, it would be Kuminga. It would be a contract, obviously, because he's not going to be making big money yet for next season. So you'd have to attach a contract to him. You probably have to give up another first round pick at some point and maybe another one of your young players or another pick, at some point down the line. So, yeah, I know I've kind of floated the Kuminga, Kuminga and a contract, but no, it would be more intricate than that.
But, if you really look at it, even if you got a number 2, I don't see the Warriors contending with any of the top teams in the West next year. Clay's going to be a year older and worse. Draymond's
if he's back,
older and worse.
If he's
even back. Yeah, if he's back. Draymond, if he's back. And Steph is going to be, 37 at the end of next year? And he definitely ran out of gas at the end of this year. To say that he would be able to go another 4 rounds is... does he? Let me ask you this. We know that Steph is definitely capable of winning a series by himself. We saw that last year. But do you really think that Steph is now capable of being the best player 4 consecutive rounds in a row to get to a title? Or is he just a little too old at this point? I just question.
No, I think, and it's funny because I don't want to be one of these guys that's like, Steph doesn't have enough help. That always be, that's always but I think in a way he needs the help to where he doesn't have to be so taxed throughout the course of the season and doesn't have to carry so much of the load throughout the season. So if it's not so much he needs the help in terms of just sheer talent to be able to be the best player. It's more that he needs the help to be able to not have to work as hard as he's had to work these last 2 seasons just to get the Warriors to 44 last year and through the first round against the Kings and then through this year. And here's the one thing, the other point that I would make, Eric, just quickly on, the smoke and mirrors component of this year. Steph missed 7 games, 8 games. Yeah. Like you cannot count on Steph Curry playing 74, 75 games.
And same thing with Clay. He played 74.
Yeah, no doubt. And so I think you almost have to build the roster in that way. But here's the thing, Eric. And you're right on the money with where you're taking this. If you don't see the Warriors contending, even if they get a number 2, then the question becomes, well, the only other option is tear the thing down. And, do the Warriors really want to tear it down while they still have Steph? And I think the answer to that is no. So they're kind of stuck, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's a rock and a hard place because I agree. I mean, it's not like you're going to trade Steph, but at the same time, the logical thing is to let Clay walk and strip it down and hope for luck that you get Cooper Flagg in the draft next year. I mean, that's the smart move, but you would never do that. That's the thing.
No, and I just don't. I think, what they're going to have to consider, Eric, and thank you for the call. 808 KNBR, the number. We'll get to Frank. We'll get to Rob. We do have a couple of lines open as people drop. You can jump into the conversation. 415-808-5627. I think, would the Warriors take a small step back next year, maybe to make one more run in 2 years? I mean, that's like even that, it's like, well, no, because Steph just turned 36. So you're talking about Steph being 37, 38 at that point. And so you really do, I think, have to decide whether you want to try to make one more run, potentially at the cost of, when Steph's gone, you're going to really have to tear it down then anyway. Like, that's kind of how I view it. Like, but again, it goes back to Kuminga. The only way to me you look to keep Kuminga is if you truly think Kuminga is going to be a superstar. Like, if you and I don't even mean next year or the next couple of years. Like, if you don't think Kuminga is going to be a superstar, then it doesn't matter if you keep him for the next 2 or 3 years. Like, it really doesn't. Like, at that. So to me, that's your answer. Like, if you think he's going to be a superstar, then you hang on to him, and you maybe take your lumps and all of that. So, all right, Frank and Rob, we'll get to you guys coming up next. Lengthy segment here to begin the program.
Told you we're going out with a bang, baby.
808 KNBR. We appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch and the Twitter stream as well. It's John Dickinson and it's Greg Silver. It's Dubs OT on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
This is KNBR, and this is Dubs OT with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Two great friends, Mike Brown and Steve Kerr, an embrace. Largest margin of victory since 2006 for Sacramento over Golden State, and Keegan Murray was brilliant here tonight with 32 points.
Yeah, Keegan Murray getting it done. Dubs OT with JD, Greg Silver back here from Sacramento as the Kings win it 118-94. They move on. Survive and advance was the order of the evening in Sacramento, and the Kings do survive. They'll go on and take on the Pelicans, another elimination game for them. It's funny, you look at the Pelicans real quick, and they went from controlling their own destiny to get 6th. They fell to 7th, and now they got to win potentially without Zion Williamson. I guess he got hurt late in the game against the Lakers tonight. So Sacramento's had some difficult injury luck down the stretch. Maybe they're going to get a little injury luck on Friday as they try to qualify for the playoffs and then take on Oklahoma City. Warriors head into the offseason. What do they do with Klay Thompson, I think, is the number one question. Steve Kerr, I saw, addressed that in his post-game press conference.
They all did.
And everybody among the veterans did as well. So we're going to have that for you coming up here on KNBR Sounds of Silver. Want to get back to the phones as we kind of fold everything into the disappointment of tonight and just kind of an all-systems fail night for the Warriors despite about an 8-minute stretch of this one. And where do the Warriors go from here? What do they do with Klay? And how does this team attempt to get better? Do you believe that the 27-12 finish was basically wiped away by the fact that this team still failed to qualify for the playoffs and they went out in a beam of flames, a big purple beam of flames here tonight in Sacramento? Let's get back to the phones, Greg, and get to Frank and Vallejo next on eSports Leader. Hey, Frank.
Hey, the one thing that's like the past couple seasons with Wiggins and JK, I get irritated at both of them because like throughout the season from beginning to end, I don't see hustle constantly, and then if they're not scoring, then they don't play defense, and then then it's a mess, from the very beginning of the season. And this has been going on since the last season too, right? So I thought I was big. I love Wiggins and JK, but they're like the biggest problems more than Klay Thompson. If Klay Thompson comes back at a lower salary and then stays in the on the bench, then we're okay. I don't mind Klay coming back, but Wiggins and JK, man, they're just so inconsistent. That's my
and look, Wiggins has been inconsistent all year. Better in that second half. Kuminga offensively became a force in the second half. Defensively, he's still got a ways to go. Both in terms of the individual defense and in particular the team defense, Greg. But it gets back to, if Klay's going to come back and take a lesser rate and come off the bench, well, who's going to start? Like, is it like I guess it's Podziemski, but that had already gotten flip-flopped again because Podziemski, after playing well enough to earn the start, lost that spot, didn't play as well. They put Klay back in. They had some injuries that sort of led to that. But yeah, the question about Wiggins, and we talked about what the question with Klay is the money. The question with Wiggins is, can you find better? And can you go through another year despite the sensitivity for some of the personal issues that he's gone through? Can you accept another season where he's either absent for a chunk in terms of just not there, and or can you account for the inconsistencies in terms of play? Because I think you could make the case in giving him maybe the benefit of the doubt a little bit that the two are connected. But Wiggins, throughout his career, even before joining the Warriors and at times before the championship season with the Warriors, that's just who he was as a player. A guy that was, sometimes the motor's revved up, sometimes the motor's not revved up. I didn't think tonight was really the motor wasn't revved up. I thought tonight was, he didn't make threes and he chunked layups and early and had opportunities to really finish around the basket. I mean, the Warriors were, I got to look at what their numbers were in terms of shooting in the paint tonight. It had to be, it was better than I thought. 20 of 35. I mean, I thought
still not great,
but 57% in the paint. I would have thought it was under 50, to be honest. The Warriors, ended up 40-40 in the paint. The Kings shot 44.4%. Did you have something you wanted to get to there? Or do you want to keep it moving on the phones? As far as I know, you're looking at quotes, you're looking at potential sound for Sounds of Silver.
The producer in me never dies.
No, that's great, man. That's all good.
Yeah, no. Let's keep it moving on the phones because I know we've had good lines and I don't want to keep people waiting.
Yeah, Rob in Sacramento is next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Rob, how you doing tonight? What's on your mind?
Well, I just had surgery this morning, and I'm also pretty bummed that I'm not going to get to watch my Warriors in the playoffs. I'm going to be honest, I wanted to see what the TNT guys said after the game, so I missed the very beginning of your show. But I want to touch on the schedule, or not the schedule, just the Western Conference for next year. And you look at all the playoff teams, and I'll count the play-in teams, like 1 through 10. They're all coming back next year. And then you look at the Rockets, they're right there. And you look at the Grizzlies, are going to have Ja Morant back. And then you got the Spurs, who, I mean, I don't know what they're going to be, but I think they're legitimately going to be vying for a playoff spot given how they ended this regular season. So I think whether we like it or not, and whether the Warriors front office likes it or not, we're in a rebuild. I mean, we're going to be fighting tooth and nail just to get into the play-in again next year. And I think one thing that Greg Papa always says is he likes to remind callers how lucky we've been about this dynasty, but also remind callers how long these rebuilds can take. So do you really want to prolong the rebuild and be in this miserable position for the next, hopefully we're not the next Bulls, but, for who knows how long? Or do we want to get this thing started right now? And I know if we deny Clay's contract, we're eligible for the non-tax level exception. And that might bring the player back that's honestly better than Klay Thompson at this point. And, we do need young guys and to start thinking about the future. I don't know about Kuminga. I really liked how he turned it on this year, but I also think that his future is at the 4. And if we're keeping Draymond, I don't think that makes a lot of sense for our team or Kuminga's development. So we're kind of in an impossible position right now. I mean, I say it might be time to just say let's start to break it down.
Yeah,
and Klay honestly might do better sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Klay also might do better with a change of scenery. He made a comment on that Draymond podcast about he was going to prioritize his mental health. And from what I'm a retired fire medic and saw a lot of mental health in my day.
Sure.
From what I can see, what Klay's going through this year has been a significant year as far as mental health is concerned for him. So I could see him going somewhere else. Maybe a fresh start could help him get his shot back. Thank you.
Yeah, and just playing with some better talent and playing in an environment where maybe the expectation isn't that he's, the bar isn't always how close or far he is away from his greatest self. Because fair or unfair, I think that's the reality with Klay Thompson, even though he doesn't have to be the Klay that he was and still can help this team win games. He proved as much this year, but there has to be a little bit of an awareness. Like tonight was a game that really felt like it really felt like there was a lack of awareness that hadn't been present from Klay in terms of he wasn't hitting and he was still kind of chucking. And there were key moments in which the Warriors needed a bucket and there were a bunch of times for not really playing a great defensive game, and the Kings were really hot from three throughout the course of the game. But there were times where the Warriors did get stops, and then they would just come down and take a horrible shot, or they would come down and miss a layup, or they would come down and turn it right back over, and the Kings would get multiple chances. And Clay, a lot of the time, was open three, and he's trying to get himself hot, and he couldn't do it. And so I think that ends up being a problem in this one. Yeah, 0 for 10 for Klay Thompson in 32 minutes, and the Warriors get blown out tonight in Sacramento, 118-94. It is Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson, and Greg Silver here tonight on the Sports Leader. Ochoa in Santa Rosa next on the phone lines as we keep it rolling here on a Tuesday night.
Hey, what's happening, guys?
What's going on tonight?
Hey, what's up?
All right, up in Santa Rosa, man. Longtime fan out here, 15 years. Saw the whole freaking saga with the whole run. Has been amazing until tonight. I don't want to focus on next year quite yet because I'm trying to soak in what the hell I just watched over the last couple hours here. We come out of the game, laid an egg. Came out of the second half. Where's our second half adjustments? What did Kerr say at halftime? We got down to 4 points, and we come out at the second half, get it to 1, and then boom, they go on a run, and we just couldn't get back into it. So what happened with our adjustments there with the coaching staff? What's up with our game plan tonight? What happened to Warrior basketball of moving the ball, extra pass, get a layup? We're pushing it. We're forcing it. Clay tried to get hot. He couldn't do it, but he's not open. Where's the extra pass? What happened to Warrior basketball? What happened to 30 assists a game? Look at the stat box, 19 assists tonight, 19 and 16 turnovers. What happened tonight? It's just tonight. I can't get over tonight. I want you guys to reflect on the coaching, the game plan, and our assists.
Yeah, I thought tonight they overpassed early. I talked about it a little bit earlier, Ocho. I thought they overpassed. I thought they were trying to be a little too fine in an attempt to get in the paint early on in the game. As far as halftime, I mean, he started Kuminga in the second half after Kuminga had played pretty well into the second quarter and going in at halftime. But there was just never a poise tonight. There was just never everything was so frenetic for the Warriors tonight. They were I thought at times they were overpassing. I thought at times they were just taking terrible shots. I thought there were times where they just couldn't get a rebound. It seemed like they lost every 50-50 ball tonight for the most part, or a good chunk of them. It wasn't 50-50. It was like 80-20 or 75-25 Sacramento in terms of that. So I think the pace was off tonight. The rhythm was off tonight. The hustle was off tonight. And, I think early on in the game, the Kings really hit them with a little bit of a haymaker in terms of just intensity and force. And the Warriors had the game plan, I think, to try and move the ball. A little bit of what had worked against the Kings in the past, which is if you run your offense, you're going to get a layup basically every time because the Kings don't defend. This is a different Kings team in terms of the ball pressure and the physicality and the ability to keep people in front of you and get into the passing lanes. And I thought they threw the Warriors off from the jump, and they just lacked the patience and a poise as the game went on, Greg.
Yeah, what I would add to that is that the Warriors' perimeter defense has been a major problem all season long, and Keegan Murray was not very effective in the series last year. He had a couple of nice games out of the 7, but
the games they won.
Yeah, had a really rough start to the series, actually. I mean, even the ones they won, he was okay to start, and Keegan was kind of invisible at the beginning. And tonight, he's kind of that X factor as your third best player behind Fox and Sabonis. They let him get 14 points.
Yeah, he made 4
right away
in the first quarter.
And to the point where our buddy Austin Scott and I and a couple of the other media members we were sitting with looked up the most points Keegan Murray's ever had in a first quarter. He had 17 one time, but other than that, this was kind of the lightning Keegan Murray start of a game. And, the Warriors were really struggling from the get-go there. As far as the lack of assists, they couldn't shoot I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big part of it, right? Like 20 of 35 in the paint.
It was the overpassing that led to turnovers that I think was the bigger problem. But then a lot of it, the rest of it is, they didn't make shots.
And I tweeted out at the end of the third quarter that the Kings had 14 more shot attempts than the Warriors.
Yeah.
They weren't shooting some ridiculous, crazy percentage, but they were getting extra shots because they were taking care of the ball and getting higher percentage looks by and large. Couple of hustle plays, loose balls, offensive rebounds, etc. But the Warriors almost had to make everything because they were getting such fewer shots up. And then they got caught in the whole thing of, well, Clay can't shoot, Wiggins can't shoot. By the way, just a quick aside, I'm not counting the garbage time players, and you might know the answer because you've had a box score in front of you all show. So everyone was a severe minus in the plus-minus category. Brandon Pajemski was the only baby minus at -3. Do you know which two players were plus?
I mean, I'm not off the top of my head. It was okay, that makes sense. Looney and
Moses Moody.
Yeah, and Moody.
Yeah.
Moody was good. Moody
was very good.
Moody, Kuminga, Pajemski, and I think a little bit of Looney really saved the Warriors in the first half. I mean, that was the only reason this thing didn't get ugly early. But when the Warriors couldn't, when the Warriors just lost their poise after that late second, early third quarter run, it just became apparent that they didn't have it. All right, 808 KNBR, let's get back to the phones. We got a lot of people that want to talk. Bill in Campbell is next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Bill.
JD, I had a bad feeling about this game. I told my brother when we went to watch it, and I said, I can't believe the Warriors are 3-point favorites. They're playing, the Kings are playing at home. The Kings are younger. The Kings are going to be out for revenge. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Warriors actually got blown out. And he told me after the game, you called it. Part of it for me too was it was kind of the epitome of their season, up and down, up and down, up and down, and it was so difficult to watch. I mean, it seemed like they were light years from the team that won 70 some odd games. I mean, as you pointed out, they really don't even know who their second and third best players are. Now, if Wiggins is healthy and in the right frame of mind, there's no question he's the second best player. Zero question in my mind. And whatever these personal problems are, I mean, that's not good to hear. I'm a psychotherapist, it's been going on for a couple of years.
Totally.
So it's, to me, Clay has to take whatever they offer if he wants to stay. He was paid when he was hurt, and he got hurt playing for them. So, that's the way it works. And now at the level he's at, I don't think they can afford to pay him, some huge contract. And I look at it that they've got some good young players, but they don't have a real star. So this is where the GM's going to come in. I mean, can he do what Myers did? Can he bring in people in the draft that are really going to pan out? And I just feel like they're in a situation right now where, as the saying goes, you are what your record says you are. And they were a 46-win team. They were not beyond that in my view. And that's not to be cruel. That's just kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, they worked themselves into, I think, the matchup and the scenario that they wanted, considering, the way everything had gone for the first half of the season. And, they got smoked. It's interesting, Bill, and thanks for the call. You said you didn't have a good feeling about it. And, I've said for the last couple of days, I think that this was the best possible opponent. Doesn't mean you're going to win the game. And obviously not only did the Warriors not win the game, but they got blown out. It was funny. I talking to a lot of people, and we were basically in Sacramento, Austin and Greg, and, we were in Sacramento all day, and we went to shoot around and, talking to a lot of different media folks that cover the Kings, that cover the Warriors, and just kind of going back and forth. And, as the day went on, I wasn't quite as confident that the Warriors were going to win the game. And the epitome of their season really was that just every time you think they're about to make a run, they'd lay an egg. They'd have a clunker. They'd have a bad game. And tonight, that was very much, I think, on brand, unfortunately for them. And yeah, the Kings, I think, were hell-bent on it wasn't going to end the same way it ended last year with how poorly, how poorly their results have been over the last couple of weeks. I don't think they've necessarily played, like we talked about earlier, as poorly as maybe it may have seemed coming in. And I think the Warriors maybe weren't playing as well as it seemed coming in. Lewis and El Cerrito here on the Sports Leader, and then we'll hear from Greg as well. Hey, Lewis.
Hey, JD. Always a great show. You said something a while back, and then the caller from Sacramento mentioned it. And I mean, everybody is saying sort of the same thing. But the one thing, or two things that I think are missing is it's almost like you're focusing too much on tonight's game. There's been a sea change in my mind in the NBA since the Warriors were really great. They could dominate with the lineup from hell, but they always had a competent center. He may have not been the best player, best center in the league, but there was always somebody who was there. And if you look at where the NBA is now, I really think we're at, again, one of those linchpins, in history, but also in sports. In baseball, there's always the classic thing when the Yankees fell in 63 to the Dodgers and 64 to the Cards. I know the sports are different, but the game was getting more athletic, and the big bomb didn't work as well for that team. I'm trying to think last time it happened in basketball, but in some ways, I think the Warriors may be that example where they introduced all of the bombs from 3 points. They have somebody who is a unique player in Curry, but the game is in. There's a lot more teams who have great 3-pointers, and all of the good teams in the West, where the best teams are, all have centers who at least are competent, but many of them are semi-elite centers. And the Warriors don't have one. And so, yes, your record is what it is, but sometimes that can be deceiving because you're actually getting ready to fall off the cliff. And I think they got to find a really good big man or develop one, or that's where they're going to go, as great as Curry is.
Thanks,
Any
Lewis.
thoughts on that?
No, it's a good phone call. I think they would tell you that I think for the time being that they think Trayce Jackson-Davis can be that guy. And then look, he's not Jokic, he's not Embiid, he's not Holmgren, he's not Wembanyama. So if you're talking about one of those kinds of guys, I think you'd almost have to take a step or two back to make steps forward in terms of getting one of those. But I do think they would even acknowledge, and I'll bet they do in the next couple of days here, that they have to get bigger. Like, I know they were kind of reluctant to do it and, reluctant to say it. And they've always kind of doubled and tripled down on the small ball and all of that. But I think they know they have to add more size and skill, because it's not just size and paint cloth. It's size and skill. It's a big who can shoot and clog the paint and maybe score a little bit on the interior. So yeah, I think, and thank you, Lewis, again for the call. But I think they're gonna in the post-mortem of this, the autopsy, I do think they're going to acknowledge that they need to have more size, not only on the wing, but in terms of actual dudes who play the center spot. That being said, I think they really like Trayce Jackson-Davis.
Yeah, and I think there's so many directions to go with this with all my thoughts. So
Sure.
I was looking at all my notes during the game as kind of the foundation to go back to. You mentioned Trayce Jackson-Davis, and I like that cut that we played on our last Just Dubs on Saturday, which was Steve Kerr on Tolbert and Copes saying that having Trayce out there at the 5 with Draymond at the 4 makes the defense feel more real. And he said he liked Draymond at the 5, but he admitted that there was some vulnerabilities there with Draymond at the 5, Kuminga at the 4, Wiggins at the 3. even though that was sort of the lineup that originally turned this season around. Let's just also call it what it is. Trayce Jackson-Davis, for a 57th overall pick, had a tremendous rookie season and proved to be way more effective for the Warriors than they ever could have asked for, because we didn't think they'd have to rely on him in the ways that they did. He didn't have it tonight. He wasn't ready tonight. It's okay. It's not a knock on Trayce Jackson-Davis. It doesn't mean that he's not going to be a big game player. He had some incredibly clutch plays in the regular season. The block on Jaylen Brown in overtime against the Celtics is one that will surely stick out to me as we head into the next season. But he had a rough start to this game tonight, and I understand why they didn't play him a lot of minutes. He just didn't have it.
He didn't have it. And again, that was one of the things that we kind of were wondering, again, the big, so much of this matchup tonight was the newbies, right? The guys who were playing more for Sacramento that hadn't been, and the guys who were playing more for the Warriors that hadn't been. And, Podziemski, I thought, was up to the challenge tonight in the moment. Moses Moody always tends to play well in these playoff play-in games. He did again tonight. He usually plays pretty well against Sacramento when he gets an opportunity. And so, he did tonight. But yeah, it's not, it's a tough ask to have, TJD go up against somebody who's an all-star caliber player in Sabonis and just expect him to be able to hold down the fort. So yeah, I don't think tonight is really, yeah, all right, you learn from it and you move on. But for the Warriors to count on him in hindsight, this is a different animal, right? And so it's part of the reason why they lost, but I don't think it necessarily means like Trayce Jackson-Davis is still a keeper. I think moving forward for this team, but sometimes your strengths become your weaknesses. And I thought, at the beginning of the game, he was one of the Warriors' weaknesses. And they ended up getting beat. 808 KNBR is the number. Still a lot of people on the phone lines here. Let's keep it going on the phone lines. We're going to have Sounds of Silver. I want to try to get through this batch of calls here as we'll keep this thing going until midnight and then call it a night at that point. Warriors lose to the Kings, 118-94. Kings move on. Warriors are done. The 27-12 is all for naught, really, at this point. Bruce in San Jose, next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Bruce.
Yeah, hey, JD. Hey, Greg. Thanks for taking the call, as always. I guess my main takeaway isn't necessarily about tonight. I guess it is a reflection, but I still can't get it out of my brain. Those 20 to 25 games that Draymond was not out there suspended. I don't think he's going to get suspended going forward, but I'm just, taking this season as it's in its entirety. Without him, we may not be in a playing game. That's all I'm trying to say. He's that important. We needed him. So that's all.
Bruce, I think that's fair. And that's all what the Warriors are going to have to be able to look at as they evaluate the team moving forward. And so, that is the crux of everything, I think, in the offseason. It's as simple as, can you, do you believe in the 27-12? Do you believe in, all right, well, why were you 19-24 in the first half? But do you believe that you can replicate all of the positive things without some of the new negative things popping up? Like, I just don't see, I'm sorry, I just don't see how you can run it back and say the 27-12 was fully real. And you know what? If Draymond doesn't get suspended, it would have been better than 19-24 in the first half. And that means, this team would have been a 5 seed or this team would have been a 4 seed. Like, I just don't think you can look at it that way. I don't know. I think you've got to look to try and change things up, because you know what it's going to be? It's going to be something else next year. It's going to be,
for starters,
Steph misses 25 games instead of 7.
There you go.
And so, you can't, the Warriors, for all of the things that they did well in the second half and the young players coming on, for all the things they did well in the second half, Steph Curry missed seven or eight. Again, I can't remember what the exact number off the top of my head. It's irrelevant at this point. But you have to you cannot count on that moving forward.
Well, let's also call it what it is. That stretch,
they were fortunate
where Steph got injured, and you could say, yeah, maybe that cost them the Bulls game because that was anybody's game, and they lost a close one when Pajemski missed the layup. That would have tied it. So you say that's a loss. They lost to the Spurs at home in an embarrassing fashion. And then they lost at Dallas, which maybe they win, maybe they don't, if Steph plays. That was 3 out of 4. And that right there was the difference between them probably playing tonight or at the very least not hosting tonight and having to play tonight and not even sniff the playoffs. They were a game away from being a game away from the playoffs, and they weren't even close to that game.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. Reggie and Vallejo next here on Dubs OT with JD and Greg Silver on the Sports Leader. What's up, Reggie?
Hey, what's up, JD? I just actually came back from the game in Sacramento. It was a pretty good atmosphere, but just some a couple key takeaways. I just thought the Warriors were kind of rattled. They didn't seem disciplined enough. They gave up a lot of offensive rebounds, and kind of goes back to, not being. There were some lineups that were kind of questionable to me, like as far as not having Looney and Trace Jackson-Davis and understanding just man, we couldn't get a rebound and we couldn't get any stops. We were only down by 4 points going to the second half.
Yeah.
And Keegan Murray. I think the plan, it looked like from where I was sitting, every time Fox would bring up the ball, they wanted to trap him up top. It looked like they doubled him and just, definitely loaded up one side. And then it looked like Murray or Barnes or Ellis was open in the corner, and they just kept hitting those big time threes to get it back to 7, 8, 9 points. And then after that, it was just an avalanche, and, the Warriors couldn't score. And I got to give it up to Mike Brown, though. He had a good game plan on Steph. Steph looked like he had to labor out there tonight to get some shots off. And the Kings made somebody else beat them other than Steph.
Yep.
And going into the offseason, the Warriors have a lot of big decisions to make, whether they – you guys were talking about either breaking it up and making a change, because I think that kind of has to happen. Do you move on from Clay? Do you move on from Wiggins? Bring in another person, bring in another piece? That's all to be kind of told in the offseason. And, a lot of questions are looming, but, I was glad I was, if this is the last time that I get to see the big three, Clay, Dre, and Steph, I'm glad I got to see them for the last time. I never thought in my wildest dreams the Warriors would win 4 chips with those 3 guys, right? It was amazing to see. And I was glad I was there at the end. And unfortunately, we had to go down the freeway to see it all fall apart. But, man, they gave us 4 chips, Warriors fans. And, we had lineups of C.J. Watson, A.C. Law, all those trash guys, and we got 4 chips, baby.
No doubt.
Any better than that, JD.
Nobody can take any of them away, Reggie. Nobody can take any of them away.
That's right. That's right. We believe, baby. Come on.
I still in the middle of the dynasty window, we still had the lineup
Reggie.
of Steph, Draymond, and Brad Wanamaker and Kent Bazemore and Nico Mannion. We had some faces. Kai Bowman, one of my faves.
Yeah, there were a lot of randoms mixed in there. 808 KNBR. Let's keep it going here. Robert in the North Bay next here before we pause on Dubs OT again here. What's going on, Robert?
Hey, how you doing? That was a good call, man. That guy had it. Yeah, that was good.
No doubt. And perspective is everything. I mean, look, there's every team basically that's in this thing ends up, except for one, going to end their season with a loss. And, sometimes it's ugly. The last 2 years, it's been ugly how the Warriors have gone out in LA and in Sacramento. But I think those are the moments in which you do have to appreciate the good times, and a good chunk of this group that got beat tonight. And I think, the Warriors didn't have it, but the Kings also, beat them tonight by the way that they played. I think you have to give credit to them. But then you look at, what Steph and Clay and Draymond have done, and you still have to appreciate it in the grand scheme of things, because it is all-time great type stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But just a couple things. One, yeah, that is great. The Warriors are unique. Maybe the Bulls, the Lakers, the Celtics are the only
that's really it over
really
like the
teams.
last 50,
and what
60
makes
years.
the Warriors more unique, or if you can be more unique, is they're the only team in that era that they won 4 championships with draft choices. The core were all drafted. The Lakers, even with Shaq and Kareem, the Bulls won. They Pippen and Jordan. But so because I go back 50 years. I remember Nate Thurman and Clyde Lee, and so this period for my son my son and I and family went. We had the Giants win 3 and the Warriors win 4. But anyway, which was great. Quickly to the team, I think Pajemski's a nice player, but he's not your 2 guard. I don't think he's a starter. And I really don't think that Kuminga is going to blossom into this dominant offensive player. We were down there Friday night to watch New Orleans, and there were so many times where you could look on the court and his team defense is really bad. He left guys wide open for shots. Well, he didn't play that night, but tonight it was really bad. There were times when him and Wiggins were 4 or 5 feet away from players. And I really like Trace Jackson. I think he's a key keeper. I think they're all keepers, but I don't see Kuminga as being a go-to guy down the stretch. I don't really like his footwork. Did he play college, or did he just come right to the pros?
You know what? I didn't hear who you were talking about. Kuminga. Kuminga went to the G League Ignite team. So he did not go to college. He went and played a year in the G League to become eligible, and then was drafted.
His footwork is not really good. I mean, you guys can see it. Fans have seen it. He got picked so many times dribbling in the lane. He lost the ball. It was unbelievable how many times he would dribble and have his ball out in front of him, and they would pick him clean. I just, like I say, I don't think he's gonna be a lights out guy. That I just don't see him being that. I think he's 3 or 4 years into his career, and he's got some flaws in his game that are just I don't know. I just don't see him as being the number 2 guy. And Wiggins, I thought him coming out of Kansas and 10 years ago, I thought he was going to be lights out, but I'm not sure of him anymore either. Like I say, Friday night when we saw them against New Orleans, they looked tired at the end of the game. They really looked tired. And so I'm not really sure what they can do. I think they need another second guard that can score, and they need somebody big like a Gordon or those guys from Dallas that are just athletic and young and can run and jump and shoot and play defense and rebound. But in retrospect, 4 championships. It's been a great run.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. Let's sneak in EJ here. We're a little overdue for a break, and then we'll comment on Robert and EJ's calls here coming up after we pause. EJ in Oakland next year on the Sports Leader. Hey, EJ.
JD, can you hear me?
I got you loud and clear, my friend.
Hey, bro. Was a huge fan of you at your last place of employment. I think besides Bill Simmons, you're my favorite hoops guy.
Wow.
Hoops analytics guy in the game. No joke, man.
That's high praise, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Of course, super disappointing. I like you said, I think it makes it easier to move on from not just Clay but Wiggins and Kuminga. Like, we need somebody to make a play tonight, and they were double teaming Curry at the top of the key. And let's blow the whole thing up.
Well, here's the part, EJ. I'm going to jump in. I'll let you finish, but I'm going to jump in here real quick. When you say blow the whole thing up, is it everything around Steph? Is it Steph too? Like Steph and Curry being the face of this franchise and still being pretty damn close to elite, if not elite, even at his advanced age now of 36. Like, that makes it a lot harder to like you got to have a conversation with Steph about, yeah, we're going to blow it all up around you, but we want to keep you because you're the franchise and the guy that everybody wants to come and see. So I think it's a little trickier. That how would you define that, I guess, would be my question for you, EJ.
We just – so the refs are letting them hold in the playoffs. I think Van Gundy made that point tonight. And just no one else could get open around the pick. Like, we had no ball movement. And so, like, I thought Draymond played really well, but, you know, we just need athleticism. And Wiggins, I don't know how old he is now, 28, 29. Like, he doesn't really do it anymore. Kuminga, like, he kind of seems like he's hit his peak, as you said. So, besides Steph, obviously, everyone should be, open for business, I think. So, thanks, man. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and so I guess it's thank you. I appreciate it. I guess it's EJ in Oakland checking in. I guess it's just retool everything around Steph. Don't be afraid to retool everything. I mean, Draymond, I think, is part of that. Although you talk to a few people, they kind of wonder. I mean, I've talked to a few people that kind of wonder, like, would the Warriors have the conversation with Steph about Draymond? I don't know. I wonder, we got Sounds of Silver coming up. We got to catch up on a break. I wanted to get your thoughts just on, because you've been able to kind of preview some of the quotes there more than I have over the last couple of hours as we've been rolling here on the show. What is the general sense coming out of the post-game press conferences as it compares to last year, where basically last year it was, we want to run this thing back again? Is it similar, without getting into too many specifics, or what is kind of the belief as to how things played out tonight and how much it should be judged in the grand scheme of things?
Little sounds of Kyle on the way back.
Yeah, little sounds of Kyle coming up. All right, so we'll do that. We'll pause. Still have time for some calls. We're going to keep it going until about 11:55 or so. So if you want to still join us on the phone lines, the lines have been lit here for the last 2 hours. It is 415-808-KNBR, 808-5627 to join the conversation. We've got some text to get to. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. The chat has just been popping off. We'll get to the best of the chat between now and midnight. And it's all straight ahead right here. It's Dubs OT with JD and Greg Silver on the Sports Leader.
live from downtown.
Hurry, way downtown. Bang!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader, streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Yeah, it's Dubs OT with JD and Greg Silver here from Sacramento on a Tuesday night. Warriors are done. They lose to the Kings, 118-94, and they are going home. End of season, Kings on to New Orleans. They'll play the elimination game against the Pelicans, and the winner there will take on Oklahoma City beginning a series on Sunday. So the Warriors head into the offseason. A lot to get into in the aftermath of this one. Not only just what went wrong for the Warriors, which was basically everything for about 40 of the 48 minutes. They did not look ready. They did not look energetic. They just like a step slow all night. Klay Thompson, awful. Andrew Wiggins, not a lot in the tank. But really all the starters plus Kuminga, aside from the little 5-6 minute stretch where Kuminga hit a few buckets in a row, like nobody had it tonight, really among the starters for the Warriors. And you got to give the Kings credit. I mean, Fox was all over it. Keegan Murray was on fire early in the game. And, Sabonis was solid. Again, not a great, maybe, game in terms of he still missed some shots in the paint, but he was getting other people involved. He was controlling the boards. He was playing physical. And, he took advantage of what proved to be one of the Warrior weaknesses, which turned out to be Trayce Jackson-Davis. In a big moment, going up against the Kings' best player, he came up how you might expect a rookie, even an experienced rookie, to look in this one. And then the Kings got enough from their others tonight too. I mean, Keon Ellis was good. Harrison Barnes was steady. Davion Mitchell was solid defensively, and they wanted to not let Curry beat him again after Curry kind of single-handedly beat him last year in Game 7. And the others for the Warriors were just all out of whack from the jump. So let's get into some of the stuff tonight. Sounds of Silver. It is twofold. It's tonight, Greg, and it's also the future, because the future is always a huge question for the Warriors given the future Hall of Famers they have on the roster.
Yeah, we have so many sounds to get to, and what we don't get through in this segment, we'll surely make sure to include in Just Dubs, and maybe we'll even have some repeats. But as much as I love the name Sounds of Silver and the way it rolls off the tongue, tonight is Sounds of Kyle. We got Kyle Chung, Kyle Haar, doing great work back in the studio in San Francisco. So big appreciation to them both, because I know exactly the level of work it's taken for them tonight. And I've gotten into a rhythm with it over the months. So big thank you to you guys. Let's start with a two-parter. We'll hear part 1 and part 2. This is cut C for you, Kyle. It's Steve Kerr when he's asked about the future of the team and reflecting on the dynasty, part 1.
Yeah, it's too early for me to even think about that. You invest so much in the season, and there's so much that goes on. It's so emotional. It's the highs and lows of this business are incredible. That's why we're all kind of addicted to it. You can't find this anywhere else in life. I know I can't. And you have to absorb the lows. We've been really blessed here with amazing players and, multiple championships and finals appearances and the highest of highs. And this is the flip side. This is life. This is how it works. You don't get to stay on top forever. So what happens this summer and going into next year, we'll worry about that later. Right now, I'm just thinking about our guys and how committed they were this year, the connection they had, the effort they put in to put us in a position to at least have a chance. And
they came up short. And I'll just finish that sentence for Steve. And they came up short. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a warranted perspective on things as this season comes to an end. And they did give themselves a chance. I do think, we've done a lot of the extremes tonight because I think it's an emotional night and the fans are hot. And, I don't think anybody expected the Warriors to get blown out. But I do think in the grand scheme of things, you do need to take a couple of days. You do need to acknowledge the fact that, hey, the Kings were the better team tonight. The Kings were the better team this season, over the course of the full season. And then I also think you have to account for the fact that, for all of the different things that we've gotten into, this team did feel a lot better about themselves and the place that they were in coming into tonight compared to just all of last season, from the Draymond punch to the Wiggins absence a year ago to just some of the Jordan Poole drama and things like that. So, the fact that this team was better connected, I think, is not nothing as you start to look forward.
Do you think that this team is better than last year's team?
I mean, I think they were. I think they were, but they did not put themselves in a better position. And when you don't put yourself in a good enough position, you can get got in one game. And so, yeah, I think they were, but it was everybody else was better, basically, and we'll see. The Kings proved themselves to be the better team against the Warriors tonight, and they'll go on and play Friday. But here's the reality. It's not like the Kings won a first-round series tonight. It's not like this is not even I know they got a little bit of, something off their back tonight, but talking about the Kings, but the reality is they could lose Friday and they don't make the playoffs either. And this year's still a disappointment. So, I think they could almost be saying the same thing. Like they thought they were better. Maybe they didn't play like it throughout the course of the year, and now they're going home. So everybody else was really good in the West, and I think that gap is something that the Warriors. There's so many different things they have to evaluate as to where they go, but I think the gap in terms of just how many good teams there are and the depth and all of that is important.
Let's keep the ball rolling here and get to part 2 of Kerr talking about the future of the team and reflecting on the dynasty. This is cut E for you, Kyle, whenever you're ready.
We clearly weren't good enough, but not for a lack of effort or commitment from our guys. They were great all year. It's incredible when I think about, you think about how difficult and physical this game was. And these guys have had, our core group, 6 finals runs where, you have 24 of these games, in one playoff run. And that's what I was thinking about down the stretch of that game, as it was clear we were losing, that, Sacramento dominated. But our guys have been fighting for so long. They're incredible competitors and warriors, and I couldn't be prouder of them. But, we've got an off season where we've got a lot to think about for sure.
Yeah. And again, that leads towards all the different questions that they're going to have. And I do think it starts with the conversation about Steph and the direction as far as, what he believes. Then I think it moves to Clay. Then it moves to, all right, well, how do you get better? And what's the best way to get better moving forward? For a year where, again, they're not only going to have to contend with themselves and trying to be, 46 and 36. But as a couple of callers have pointed out tonight, it's the teams beneath them that have the potential to be moving up in the Western Conference next year as well.
Absolutely. We may hear another one from Steve Kerr, but I want to move over to some of the players and the bigger personalities on the team. That, of course, would start nowhere else with Draymond Green. Just talking about his teammate, Clay, and his future. So this is cut H. It's about 2 minutes long, and this is Draymond on his Hall of Fame teammate.
Obviously, we want Clay back. It's we've been through a lot. Incredible highs, some shitty lows. But the common denominator through both of them is that we've gone through each and every scenario together. It's obvious that we want to continue what we've been doing, but I understand he got a decision to make. He's going to make the best decision for him. Team got a decision to make. They'll make the best decision for the team. But, I have no doubt that even if, which I don't think there's any scenario where Clay leaves and that's the best decision for this team and organization. But what I don't doubt is if Joe or Mike or anybody felt that it was best that this team moves forward without Clay, that wouldn't be the decision they make because they believe that. They've shown nothing but respect, loyalty, love, trust to us. So I got no reason to go into it like, oh, man, they're not going to do right by Clay. They did right by me. They've done right by Steph. They've done right by all of us. Clay tore his ACL. They paid him $160 million. So I have no reason to think that our ownership group aren't going to take care of us the way we've taken care of this organization. Like I said, ultimately that decision will be Clay's. But I don't look at it like, oh, man, they're going to only do what's. There's a lot of organizations that will only do what's best for the organization. This ain't one of them.
Well said. I think by Draymond there, I wanted to bring it back to Clay here for a second because I was kind of scanning through Twitter a little bit tonight in the aftermath of this thing, and I want to go back to it was a Marcus Thompson tweet from a couple of hours ago, and Marcus said, when you think about it, Clay's performance might ensure he stays with the Warriors, and that also relates to, and I know our guy Austin, I think, was kind of laughing at that, but it relates to a text that we had on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line, and we had a caller earlier who said from the 925, Clay better take whatever they offer him if he wants to stay. 2-48 is out the door, says the texter. I'm not so sure that 2-48 is out the door, but I do think it's interesting that that thought of, well, the offer that Clay may have thought he was going to get that would have been enough out of the Warriors' price range to where the Warriors would say, we can't do it, we have to move on. That offer may be gone.
Yeah, no, it certainly might. It's funny. I was thinking that,
like, would you rather have Malik Monk or Clay if you're like a free agent? Like, if you're not the Warriors, because the Warriors can't sign Malik Monk. I'm not saying that, but like if you're one of these teams, Orlando or whatever, like I'd rather Malik Monk.
Take the youth.
I'd rather have Malik Monk. I mean, it's point blank. I mean, Clay's a shooter. Malik Monk can shoot and also can kind of handle and be aggressive and has a DGAF component to him that I like for a young team. So again, I'm not saying that's going to be for every, Orlando's going to figure out what's best for them. But I think when you look at it, it's Clay may not have quite as many suitors based, I don't want to say based solely on tonight, but didn't help.
No, not at all. I mean, Tim Kawakami wrote a pretty good column for The Athletic saying that when Clay was having that hot stretch not that long ago, every time he was finding his flow, his price tag was moving up. And tonight certainly doesn't erase all of that. It's not our question of the night in terms of Clay and contract, but it's kind of a sour note to end on, and it's what you had to confront last year with Klay Thompson. So final 8 to 9 minutes or so here on Dubs OT. Let's hear one more cut, and then we'll kind of recap it all, get to some of the chat, and call it a night, and make sure that we can all eventually go get some sleep. This one is going to be from none other than Steph Curry. Can't have a final Dubs OT of the season without Steph. It's just his general reflection on tonight's loss and the season they had.
It's a horrible feeling. You go out there and compete, leave it all out there, and doesn't go your way. We obviously understand you can't win it every year, but there is so much belief that we could make something of this season and keep our hopes alive, trying to get a win tonight and taking it from there. Sacramento played unbelievable tonight. They played aggressive, and Keegan's making shots. D Fox is creating. It seemed like they got every 50-50 loose ball, offensive rebound, and it was a tough way to end our year for sure, because we've obviously been through so much all year. These last 2 months, gave ourselves a chance to be in this situation where, you win one game, then you're right where we expect to be, but we're going home. So definitely frustrating, disappointing, to say the least. But you hold your head high knowing there's a lot more in the tank. And for me personally, that's the mindset.
And the Warriors are going to need a lot more in the tank from Steph Curry if they're going to get back to being, any form of a legitimate contender. You had another quote to add to that.
Yeah, just
well.
a quote from Curry in the press conference, and we'll get you a lot more sound as we get to Just Dubs at the end of the week here. We'll have 4 days to kind of soak it all in, gather up all the sound, and give you a great 2-hour show.
Yeah, great 2-hour show, 10 to noon. We'll do it on Saturday. Again, Mike Dunleavy Jr. will probably have the post-mortem press conference at some point here over the course of the next 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So there will be even more sound and kind of big picture stuff to look forward to. And, of course, we'll be talking all about it on KNBR the next couple of days as well.
So Steph Curry said that he wants to keep this core three together and was pretty adamant about that. But then he also added, I just want to win and be in the best situation to make that happen. He has belief in the core. And he knows that the championship trio has a lot more left in the tank. Those might not be the same kind of thing, though. Like keeping the core together and also just wanting to win and make that possible.
Well, you can keep the core together, but you can't keep the core together as your first, second, and third best players anymore. Like that to me that's apparent. I mean, they have to find. Like you can keep Klay Thompson as a bench player or a fourth option, a guy that you don't have to play well to have any chance to win a game in a big situation. Like you can keep all those guys. What you want if you're the Warriors, Greg, is you want the ability to be able to keep all of the good qualities that the three of them have, and it's really Klay we're talking about here, right? I mean, Steph is still, but even Steph, there has been a small decline this year. Like just reality, it's age, small decline. It's just that's life, it's truth. He's still great, but what I'm getting at is with you can keep the best qualities, but you also have to account for the deficiencies, and you have to account for the fact that Klay can't be your 2 anymore. So you got to go find a 2. And if Klay's your 4th best option, then that's fine. Like Draymond, as long as he stays healthy, still playing at a pretty high level. But you got to find complementary players to Draymond that help with Draymond's deficiencies. And so you're not wearing these guys out. Like that's the problem that the Warriors have. They still want to have the core, but the core is just not good enough to lead them to a quality enough regular season on their own to where you're not the 9 seed or the 10 seed. I mean, that's the issue. Like you can't, like if you had if this team was good enough in other areas to be the 5 seed or the 6 seed and you had Steph and Klay and Draymond, then you'd feel like you got action still, but you don't. So how do you get that? Because I feel like this thing is set up, and I went for it last year as far as what they said, as far as running it back one more time and maybe being a little bit more veteran laden. Like I could accept that last year. I don't think I can accept that this year. Like you got to do some. I think they're set up to be a different version of the same again. If it's Klay took less and. Wiggins is still around because you couldn't find somebody else, even though you shopped them, and they didn't want to give up Kuminga. And so then he's back. And then then you're just, what you're going to do? You're going to win 45, 46 games next year. And you might be the 11 or the 12 next year with somebody that, so it's like, you gotta take some of the things that you like. You got to figure out which one of those things, which among those things are the most important. And you got to add to it. This team needs a little bit of they need a little bit of a youthful energy to what they've got, and not like, role player energy, like a carrier. And that's what they don't have. All right. Got about 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, no, just to kind of wrap things up here, big thank you to JD, big thank you to Austin Scott on our digital side, Michael on the digital side, everyone that made Dubs OT work. We got the Kyles back in the studio. We have our newer hires like Ryan, and then we've had Cole helping all year. So just a big thank you to everyone that's made this happen, as we had to build this in the middle of the regular season.
It's been an unbelievable run. I think the Warriors were 9-9 when we started this. So, you do the math on how many games that was, 18 games into this, and they ended up playing 82. So, we were with you for basically, about 80% of this thing. And it was a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody in the chat, from GSW Vera to Ed Botello, Uncle Looney, Fozzie, who called in. I mean, Bill M., Douglas Mike, San Jose Jazz fan,
Andis Brown, CA, Rockin' New Era,
Brown, Enrique, like everybody in the chat. Drew Down, who gave us a call a little bit earlier. I mean, just so many of our favorites, and there was so much going on. I'm gonna dig through the chat tonight, and I'm basically look forward to Saturday, because I'm going to dig through the chat tonight, and I'm going to find the best of the best in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just going to bookmark them all. And that's basically going to be a big part of the conversation in leading to our show.
Well, look, Fozzie here says Dubs OT is over for the year, but that doesn't mean we can't meet up at Harmonic. Yeah, no doubt about it. And also, big thank you to San Jose Jazz fan who said we were very gracious hosts. Hey, the pleasure was all ours. Watching San Jose Jazz fan take that beer sampler. And we're not talking about a flight, everyone. We're talking like one full beer as a sample.
He made his own flight with 16-ounce beers. It was, with pints. He made his own. Goo Goo Gaga, and appreciate everybody. Otis Bird III is one of the best. I'm sure there are a bunch. Rockin' New Era 84. Serge Echeverria, appreciate you. Just wonderful season. A big thanks to Adam Copeland for bringing us all together. I mean, Austin and Greg, it's been a pleasure to work with both of you guys all season since I joined the team, and there'd been a lot going on. Guys were here and gone and back, and we all spent the day in Sacramento and rolled up together. And to be honest, that doesn't happen if we don't all genuinely like each other. And
not one car.
Like one car, like together and we got about another 90 minutes to go. So we're going to get out of here and call it a night on that note. But join us Saturday, 10 a.m. until noon, Just Dubs, and we'll continue to break everything down. So for Greg and Austin and the Kyles and everybody, we will talk to you Saturday. This has been Dubs OT with JD and Greg Silver, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.